Before the Horus Heresy, there was the Great Crusade, a war meant to unite the galaxy, and yet it became the beginning of its end. Today we will uncover how the Emperor forged the greatest empire, and how a crack of betrayal lay hidden at its very foundation. After the last wars on the ruins of ancient Terra had finally fallen silent, the Emperor of mankind turned his gaze to the stars. Terra, torn apart for centuries by madness and barbarity, was at last united into a single fist. But this was only the beginning. The Emperor did not see humanity as scattered tribes, but as an eternal civilization destined to rule the galaxy. The flames of the unification wars consumed the old regimes and the twisted remnants of the dark age of technology. Resistance was crushed, false kings and petty warlords were cast down. In the shadow of this bloody victory, the seed of the Imperium was planted. Upon the ashes of the old world, the Emperor forged a new order, cold, iron-bound, merciless. Yet even for him, time alone was not enough to raise humanity to its destined height. For this, he conceived a project that would forever change history, the Primarchs. 20 sons, born not of flesh but of genius. In each of them, a fragment of the Emperor himself. They were meant to be generals, heralds of his will, living instruments of the Great Crusade. And then the storm came. The warp, a ravenous abyss, ever hungry for souls, intervened. By one account, it was a cruel accident. By another, a deliberate strike from powers the Emperor had refused to worship. Whatever the truth, the Primarchs were scattered across the galaxy. 20 capsules carried away by the tides of the Imperium, cast onto savage worlds where their fates were twisted by alien cultures and strange gods. The Emperor lost his sons, but not his design. From the genetic matrix of the Primarchs, he created the legions Astartes, armies of transhuman warriors, thousands of gene-forged soldiers, each bearing a shard of their father's might. They were not merely soldiers, they were legions, tempered for endless war. With their creation, humanity possessed at last an army that could conquer the stars. The pact with Mars magnified this power. The ancient tech priests of the Mechanicum, worshippers of the machine, were hostile to all things flesh. Yet the Emperor struck a bargain. In exchange for freedom to pursue their faith, they armed the legions with weapons, fleets, and engines of war. Thus was forged the uneasy alliance of Imperium and Mars, two powers bound by a common purpose, yet divided by eternal suspicion. And so began the Great Crusade. Vast armadas rose into the void. The banners of the Emperor unfurled over millions of worlds. Some civilizations bent to his will without resistance. Others burned in the fire of exterminatus. Some peoples were taken as allies, others erased from existence for defying unity. On every new world, the same truth was written in blood and fire. Humanity would be one, or it would be nothing. Step by step, the Emperor recovered his lost sons. At the edges of the galaxy, he found them, one after another. Primarchs shaped by alien worlds, hardened and scarred by their pasts. Each, in his own way, became an instrument of his will. Some greeted him with reverence and boundless loyalty, others with doubt, pride, or hidden contempt. But all accepted command of the legions wrought from their own blood. The crusade grew, and the Imperium expanded. The Emperor's greatness seemed unbreakable. World by world, sector by sector, the galaxy bent to him. Yet the farther his armies marched, the deeper grew the shadows behind them. Among the people, whispers spread. The Emperor was no mere sovereign, but a god. Men knelt before him not only as their ruler, but as their savior. And this became the first crack in the foundation. Primarch Lorgar, zealous and fanatical, raised temples to the emperor and turned armies into processions. His legion knelt before their father as if he were a divine being. But the emperor rejected this. He descended to shatter Lorgar's holy city, to break the cult, and to humble his son before the eyes of his legion. "I am no god," the emperor declared. Those words were meant as a lesson, but they became the seed of betrayal. After the chastisement of Lorgar, the emperor once more drove his armies forward. Yet the fracture sown in men's hearts did not vanish. The legions continued to conquer new worlds, and each step forward seemed a triumph. But the further the emperor's light spread, the deeper the shadows it cast became. World after world fell before his legions. Colossal armadas crushed ancient civilizations and brought entire sectors of the galaxy to heel. Where humanity accepted the Imperium, it was permitted to endure. Where resistance was raised, fire followed, and cities were left in ruin. The Imperium knew no mercy. The Primarchs became more than generals. They became symbols. Each bore the mark of his homeworld, stern and unyielding, proud and grim, furious and wise. In that diversity lay strength, but also peril. The blood of the emperor ran in their veins, but so too did their own will. And often that will stood at odds with their fathers. Lorgar did not forgive humiliation. His legion, stripped of faith in the emperor as a god, turned its gaze toward other powers. And within the abyss of the warp, those powers were eager to answer. Even as the Great Crusade thundered with victories, in the hearts of warriors, the fire of betrayal already smoldered. But the emperor, as ever, pressed on. His goal was clear: to bring the crusade to its end and return to Terra, to complete a design hidden even from his sons. He spoke little, and even the Primarchs did not know what he labored upon in the shadow of the Golden Throne. Yet this departure, this silence, became a fracture soon to widen into an abyss. The culmination of the crusade came with the triumph at Ulanor. The Orc hordes, whose numbers had threatened the galaxy itself, were annihilated by the united legions. The battle was brutal, but the victory magnificent. In its honor, the emperor decreed a celebration unmatched in history. Millions of warriors gathered to give praise. At Ulanor, the Imperium stood at its zenith. Enemies broken, stars conquered, mankind united beneath a single throne. And then the emperor announced the decision that would change history forever. He would depart the crusade. He would return to Terra to labor upon a project surpassing even the conquest of the stars. And command of the vast armies of the Imperium he bestowed upon one man, Horus, his favored son, first among equals. Among the Primarchs, this decision became a wound. To many it was plain. The emperor had entrusted Horus with everything, raising him above his brothers. He who had been a commander yesterday now stood as war master. Pride, envy, resentment, seeds planted in the hearts of those who deemed themselves no less worthy. Horus accepted the mantle. Millions of legionaries bent the knee. His renown was unchallenged, his genius in war unrivaled. Yet in this moment began that which would become the greatest catastrophe in the history of mankind. The Imperium stood at the pinnacle of glory, but it was there its heart proved most vulnerable. As the Emperor toiled upon his hidden project on Terra, the Primarchs and their legions were left alone, torn by doubt, ambition, and concealed hatred. And into that widening fracture, the voices of the warp began to seep. The Great Crusade ended in triumph, yet its victories sowed the seeds of ruin. Horus, raised up by the Emperor, was meant to carry his work forward. Instead, He would become the weapon of the gods his father refused to worship, and the empire wrought with blood and iron would soon drown in a war of brother against brother. Thus ended the Great Crusade, and thus began the road to heresy. If you found this journey into the darkness of the Imperium intriguing, support the video with a like and subscribe to the channel.